2017, notification was sent to the Star Ledger, promptly posted on the municipal bulletin board, and promptly open to the municipal clerk. Forming the public and time and place according to the provisions of the Open Public Meeting Law, Chapter 231, 1975. Good evening, everyone, and welcome.
Good evening.
It's nice to see a large crowd in the audience. Thanks. We will hear from our borough engineer, Mike. Let's go. I assume we're going to talk about curb.
Yes, I was asked to look at a curb on the Myrtle Avenue, and I had sent an email response regarding that. I trust that you all had that. Unquestionably, there's a bulge to the curb caused by a tree. The timing of when that tree came down is anywhere from 1 to 3 years ago, apparently, last year. Apparently, the resident has requested this in the past. The street is not scheduled to be paved in the next year, as I understand it, through the 2 grant projects. So, the choices are to wait until you have a street paving project in that area, or you have to commit funds to do that at this time. It's strictly a financial decision. I'm sure there's more than that curb bulge around town. When I went to the street, not knowing the exact address, I saw 3 on Myrtle alone. So it's a question of whether you want to parlay these commingle them into a larger thing, get some economies of scale, or just wait.
Well, I mean, would it be better to do the ones that are all in disrepair? Can that be done in a separate thing? I'm not sure how that can be done, because some of these people have been waiting for years to get these rectified.
Yeah, you could inventory the entire borough if you want, where these curb sections are, and then go out with either a quote if it's small enough, or a bid if it's going to exceed your quote threshold. 17.5. So you're not going to get a lot for 17.5.
Well, maybe we could start with the older ones or
Sure.
whatever, but these are all caused by town trees being planted there, correct? So it's our
Absolutely.
responsibility.
Yeah.
Okay.
The only question I have, is are these any type of a hazard right now? Is it hazardous the way that the curb is?
Again, I only looked at 3 on Myrtle, prompted by the 1, so I haven't gone borough-wide. I can't comment on that. The one I saw, I wouldn't categorize it as an emergency where you got a sinkhole or something that you have to do immediately. It's clearly probably been there prior to the tree being removed, so it could have been there for 3 years, 5 years. I don't really know. It probably has to be done. I can imagine it's a nuisance in that a car, if you're parallel parking there and you're not envisioning that 10-foot section of curb being bumped out, and you're going to hit the hubcap with a wheel on that more frequently than if it was a straight shot. Okay. So, again, it's financial. I mean, we could go out, certainly, and quote and do the one. You're going to pay for a contractor to essentially mobilize for the one location. You could put a couple together that would, at least on a unit basis, reduce the unit cost for these. Or you could, quite frankly, I could inventory on your behalf every street in town to see how many of these we have and give you a list. And you could have a knowledge of maybe where you're going, how exposed you are from.
Is it too late, Tina, maybe it's better for you to answer, is it too late for this, the curbs would apply for the infrastructure grant, correct? Is it too late to include that as part of?
You didn't fund for that. You only funded for the.
So it's too late at this point?
No, it's not too late. You have to amend the bond, put more money in it, and their bids and specifications for the curb, because I'm telling you right now, it's going to be over 17.5, you need one curb. Go out for bid, and you can just do a separate bond, in fact, not even the same bond. But no, there is no money. The estimate for Center Street, bids came in a little bit higher, so there's no change in that.
Okay. I like the idea of inventorying all of the curbs and then doing it as one project as a whole. And as much as of course, we want the curbs to be fully functional, I'd rather it seems to be efficient for us to try to do as many of these curbs, because I'm sure maybe we did hear complaints from other residents that haven't brought it to our attention, So if you could do those curbs. sort of
Yeah,
collectively.
I could inventory every curb, buy a drive-by, and then out of the car, if it seems to need that
With some
scrutiny.
small evaluation with that address.
Yes.
You know.
And then, quite frankly, there may be some that just stand out that are really, more drastic, or I don't want to say hazardous, but, more of an issue. They may be bumped out more, they may be leaning, that type of thing. They may be longer in length. So I have no problem doing that on your behalf, is inventorying that, and then at least you'd have a better idea of what your overall exposure would be on it.
Yeah, maybe get the ones that were.
It's just time,
complained
really,
about
it's
first.
easy enough to
It
do.
sounds like we
Thank-
have a consensus to do that at council.
Yes, and I just want to add to Mr. Disco, I appreciate that inventory, and Councilman Lazaro and I did take a drive around the whole town, and there's a number of parts that are missing curb completely,
Okay.
including South Avenue, which the county will pave the road, but they won't do the curb work. So that one's in some dire need of curbs. I've also had a complaint from one of the business owners on South Avenue over on the Cranford side about a curb near a water pipe, I believe.
Okay.
So this could be a really costly endeavor, but I just wanted to confirm, even within the DOT grant that we applied for and those projects, we don't have a way of just putting this one particular complaint in with that at this point? I know Councilman Lazaro asked about the infrastructure grant with the county, but what about the state grants, the DOT grants?
We just made application for 2018, so you can't revise the application.
Can't revise it this time, okay?
But you got awarded in 2017 and you bonded for it already. The bond language doesn't include this curbing, so you have to amend the bond to include this curbing. Which in 2018, you haven't been awarded yet, you haven't prepared the bonding. You'll get that notification early next year. When you go to prepare that bond, you include this curbing. If
Okay.
you so choose to,
Okay.
in that bond ordinance, and then appropriate the funds for it. And
Okay, so maybe we can go at it two-prong. One is do the inventory, and then also, in the meantime, keep in mind that we could make the amendment next year, early next year,
Sure.
if need be.
Are you,
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, should I expand that inventory to the county roads?
Yes,
Okay.
How come the county roads don't take care of curbing?
There's
They-
a
it's
resolution
just their
in
policy.
place
It's
from
our responsibility.
1939 that says the county just does the service.
I did ask other towns too.
They're consistent with that.
Councilwoman Tedisco, and Councilman Lazaro, when you did, I know we have sort of a hierarchy of the roads that are the worst, what needs paving. Any idea about this block where that fell? Is it possible that it's going to come about in 19, or is this a pretty good?
quite honestly, it didn't make our list that we looked at and then came with, as a committee, up with a few recommendations we gave the council. But we did take curbs into consideration when we put together that list. But there are areas of town, quite honestly, much worse in the curb situation than that particular block. I actually went there just before the council meeting to check it out personally too. So,
Yeah, it's not included in the 3 streets that you chose for next year's
Correct,
DOT.
right.
And according to the map that I was given by the administrator, it hasn't been recently paved either, so.
And
Yeah,
we don't have that map.
Yeah, just to review it, because I did look at our little, guideline that we made for ourselves, and it's definitely, we're trying to choose the ones that really were most urgently in need. So it's not, it had nothing to do with the year that it was paved, it has more to do with comparative looks and the feel for the roads. So, but yeah, I think that we should get an inventory of the curbs, and from your perspective, since you have a better sense of
Yeah.
what is
I
really
mean,
a safety hazard.
From driving just the length of Myrtle, it appeared to me to be the worst of the 3 that I saw, but I couldn't tell you, couldn't compare it to
Yeah.
anywhere else in the borough. I just haven't had that exercise.
That
So,
would be
yeah.
great if you could compare that.
Yeah, that would be great. So it wouldn't be hundreds of these.
It very well could be, Councilman, from going out and driving every street. It took 3 hours, and there's quite a bit of curbs that are either missing
Well, I
or
guess once we get the
down.
whole inventory, then we can break it down, maybe how long somebody has had an issue with it. Maybe they've been there for 4 years and they've been, so we can break it down that way and see how the best way to do it is.
And then look at the finances.
Well, of course, the finances first, and then we work out what can be done and then work down the list.
It'd be difficult to determine how long somebody's had the problem unless they physically tell you.
Well, unless they complained, unless there was a complaint from the homeowner, then we would have no way of knowing about that, so.
Thank you.
Council?
Okay.
Thank you very
Yep.
much.
Yes, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. I'm all-
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Nice to see
Hi,
you.
Mike.
Nice to see you too.
Thank you.
Council, right now, I'd like to suspend the regular order of business to present the mayor's award to the Galway Girl Scout Troop for 123. Ms. Bloomstock, do you please join us? Thank you. As mentioned on the dais, Mayor's Appreciation Award we give to the Girl Scouts. We have a certificate for the leaders, I believe, and 16 Girl Scouts. So I'll just read as we presented. Then Councilwoman Lewis, I'd like to say a few words on behalf of the project. Okay. On behalf of all the citizens of Garwood, and it gives me great pleasure to present Mayor's Appreciation Award to Garwood's Girl Scout Troop 40123, who have recently earned the Bronze Award by sprucing up the school bus station at the corner of North Avenue and Walker Street. The bus shelter is owned by the Garwood Lions Club, who approved their project. You have demonstrated your creativity, your artistry, this beautification project depicting Garwood's small town, big heart motto. The handprints of the Scouts, Garwood Lincoln School, teachers, and members of the fire and police department all take the shape of the giant heart on the back of the bus station shelter. This project will be viewed for many years by residents and commuters alike with great pleasure. I also wish all of you the best success you can obtain in your Girl Scout career and program. Thank you.
I just wanted to congratulate you girls and just tell you how proud I am of you. It was really nice. I even got a chance to help out on the bus shelter. I stopped by with my daughter, and she was so excited, and you guys were great letting her paint with you. And I just want to say how proud I am of you, not only as a councilwoman here, but as a mom, because it was really great to have my little girl see what great role models you are, and you showed her how you take care of the town and how much you care about Garwood, and that really comes through. And I can't tell you, there's not a day that goes by that somebody does a remark about the bus shelter to me and tell me that it just puts a smile on their face when they come down, when they come out of the bus or they come off the train and they see that. So girls, you did a fantastic job, and you should be really proud of yourselves. The leaders, Maria Cortese, Denise Cafiero, and Patricia Henkel. You want to wait for the girls and take a picture with that?
Yes. Oh, we'll have each girl come forward.
Do you, Maria, do you want to call off their names
Okay.
so that everybody knows them and they can come up one at a time to get their certificate?
We'll start over there.
Okay.
Alyssa Schlauber. Isabel Corteza. Madden Ferrari. Ava Wood. Abigail Henkel. Sophia Schmiel. Leah Sikowski. Cassandra Ruben. Danielle Archer. Zoe Brown. Haley Yurchak. Alexander Ferreira. Lauren Raftery. Amy Ryan.
passion is like.
I know what that's like, but I'm not sure. I know what that's like. I mean, you have to go to
Can we do one with just the girls?
Kaylee, you're standing next.
Annie, can you? Yeah.
Lauren Pittown.
Wait, we have to be able to see the mayor.
Where's everybody?
I'm going home.
Zoe, can you move over? And Lauren, come over on this side of.
Annie, you come in your face. Leaders, do you want one with them?
Yes.
You have like a
Yeah,
thousand.
just like hundreds of photos at this point. You have no more space.
Thank you very
Just like that. Exactly.
We will continue on, Mr. Bernard, your questions here.
Sure, let me tell you, Mayor, about what we're going to do later on, or at least what, I guess you're going to do whatever you're going to do, but I'll tell you about what we're going to address. So, I appeared before the planning board on October 11th with the 3 ordinances that have to do with the compliance hearing, and discussed with them the master plan and the 3 ordinances. The planning board voted to adopt the master plan that was prepared, and also was prepared in accordance with the draft summary plan that you approved of when we voted on the settlement agreement and went to court in, I guess it was early April. So on the 3 ordinances, the planning board recommended that they all be adopted. I have forwarded to you the resolution that the planning board adopted. One of them, they recommended be adopted without changes. They indicated that they were all consistent with the master plan as it's amended, of course. The development fee ordinance, it recommended be adopted. The affordable housing ordinance, they had a couple of questions and recommended a change, which I thought was going to be a problem because I thought at the time that it conflicted with the Uniform Housing Affordability Control Regulations of COA. I indicated that to the board at the time and explained that I would that the ordinance could be adopted with that, and then I would come to you as I am telling you that you cannot adopt the first recommendation that they made with respect to the affordable housing ordinance, that is to give the option for the number of bedrooms in a mix to the borough rather than to the developer, because as I indicated, it conflicts with the Uniform Housing Affordability Controls. As I said, I suspected that. I thought that was the case when I appeared before the planning board, but I didn't have the regulation handy. On the second recommendation on that ordinance, the board thought that PURD, which means Planned Unit Residential Development, should be spelled out. And as I indicated, had that suggestion been made originally, I probably would have gone along with it, but at this point, in view of the fact that you can't make the first change, I don't think it's worth the time, effort, expense, republication to make a change to change PURD to Planned Unit Residential Development. It has no substantive difference at all. It just, it's identified in the regulations, so it's not as though we don't know what it is. So my recommendation on that ordinance, that is the affordable housing ordinance, is that you adopt it as it was originally presented and not adopt the planning board's recommendations, as I said, one of which is illegal and the other of which is not worth the effort. With respect to the third ordinance, which is the Garwood Mall overlay ordinance, the planning board made 3 recommendations, all of which the planner agreed were good recommendations. I am in concurrence to that extent with those recommendations. I spoke to the special master. She would be in concurrence with those recommendations and would recommend to the court that it permit us to amend the proposed ordinance to incorporate those changes. Those changes are they're identified in the ordinance that I have provided to you in what we call track changes form. They are in section 106-98.5D3. The purpose of the change is to allow the development of the site with either the permitted uses existing on the site or the permitted uses permitted under the overlay ordinance. That is, the overlay permits residences, the old ordinance permits commercial, so that the ordinance as amended would allow a mixed-use development, which everybody is in agreement would be a good change. The second change is in section 106-98.5 G H. Under the bulk regulations, it changes the maximum building height from 40 feet to 50 feet. The reason is to allow, because today retail generally wants to have much higher ceiling heights than what the ceiling heights are in the past. In other words, if you do a building with a 10-foot ceiling height, you're not going to get any retail tenants for that. So the purpose was to allow, not to increase the number of stories, that would remain the same as was introduced, but to increase the permitted height, primarily to allow a higher first floor. And then the third change is very minor, and that was to amend 106-98.5K to make clear that an indoor trash and recycling area is required to be in the principal building as opposed to in an accessory building, all of which recommendations, as I indicated, were endorsed by the planning board, or recommended by the planning board, and endorsed by the planner and by the special master. So these ordinances are going to come up for public hearing, obviously, later. And so with respect to 17-21 and 17-22, the recommendation is that you adopt those ordinances. And with respect to 17-23, the recommendation is that there be a motion to amend that ordinance in accordance with the proposal which I have given you, and that then would be voted on, and then the public hearing and second reading and presumably final passage of that ordinance would then take place at presumably the next meeting, which I think is
11/14.
The only issue would be, I don't know whether it makes any difference. I may not be here on November 14th because that's the league conference, and I'm probably going to be there that night, but it's fine. So, let's see. I don't think I have anything else. Just oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, we did the, also on for introduction is the development fee ordinance that we did, which was as per your request. And I know when we get to Councilwoman Kukro's report on the, I guess it's the Laws and Licenses Committee, I guess we're going to talk about the
Rhodey?
yeah, the road.
I think we still got it.
You want to talk about it now?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me just see if I have anything else before we do that. No. Okay. Let me pull that ordinance out. Oh, okay. All right, so I did prepare the ordinance in accordance with what I understood to be the instructions. I got an email from Councilwoman Kukro who wanted some changes in it, so if you want, if the council wants those changes, I will make them. We just need to clarify what they'll be. And I guess I should make some comments on, whether you all brought your copies of the ordinance with you, but one of the changes was a proposal to change the wording of proposed section 99-18.1 G. specifically paragraph 4 of G. The way that it was originally written was, and this came from the Westfield ordinance, it said failure to provide for written proof of inspection, has to do with rodents, vermin, and the like. Failure to provide for written proof of inspection and treatment as appropriate by a state licensed pest control service for insects, rodents, or other vermin upon notice of violation from any agent of the Board of Health for all public or private property. That would be a violation, I should have said. And the proposed change is to take out written proof and inspection and the requirement of a licensed pest control service. So if you want that changed, then I can make that change.
Well, we did have a couple other things, like I said, just so that they
Right, I'm
understand.
only on that one right now.
Right,
so
exactly,
it's
so
still
I'll
mine.
address that one. Basically, it was a matter, we thought that it was a little bit overreaching. I mean, you know, we don't want people that have limited funds to go out there and have to hire professionals. So we also felt that, you know, if they could do it themselves and provide proof of that, you know, that would be sufficient. And I think the other thing was the amount of the charges for the violations. Who was going to be enforcing it, which we did get, you know, word today from the Board of Health of who was going to be enforcing it. So it was, you know, I mean, I think the fee was $50 to $1,000, which I thought was way too high, and possible jail time. I don't want to be concerned with residents that they're going to jail because they have a couple rodents in their backyard. So I didn't think that, we didn't think that the laws and license did not think that was suitable. And also, I mean, because people were asking as far as who would be doing the enforcement, and it would be the Board of Health that would issue the summonses. I think everybody got a copy of that today, right?
This is the email.
This was the email that I called up Megan, and she sent the email over.
And she also recommended, however, that we stick with the
She recommended that we
proposed fees.
stick with the fees, but I didn't feel that was right. She figures because when it goes to the judge. So basically what happens is the Board of Health would issue the complaint, you know, to the police department, and basically the Board of Health would issue the summons. And then it would go to the judge, which never enforces the maximum amount for non-compliance.
The police would issue the summons, but the Board of
No,
Health.
the Board of Health would
do it.
issue the summons, and it goes to court. They said they have the wherewithal of doing that. She said she would never want to put it on the
Is
police.
that so all the other towns currently have that range of fine, those that work with.
We looked up a couple other ones.
We did.
They were
They're
varied.
slightly different, but Mr. Arnaud, maybe you could speak to that, because I think the penalty covers more than just this particular
Right.
section. It's already existing and it covers.
Penalty is existing and it covers the entire article. The issues, and listen, you can do it however you want it, it doesn't matter to me. I think you're making the ordinance unenforceable by making the changes that are proposed, because if you do that, who's going to decide what proof is that somebody has exterminated? If you don't do it professionally, is somebody going to bring a dead rat in and say, well, I killed a rat, so I've exterminated? I think there's a standard that you get a certificate from a licensed pest control service. If you don't have any particular standard of proof, then I think you're making the ordinance unenforceable. So that's, I feel I need to tell you that. Then the second issue is, I don't agree that what's proposed to be changed is less punitive than what's in the ordinance now. First of all, if we write a penalty provision for every single ordinance, will be, I mean, it's not a problem for me to do it, but we don't generally do that. Usually have a range of penalties for any violation under a particular chapter. And I would also point out that the ordinance that you're proposing that I copy from makes the fine up to $500, but it also says that the fine may be imposed for every day that a violation remains. So if you got an order for somebody to remediate, they don't do it for 10 days, then it's a $5,000 up to $5,000. I mean, do I really think the judge is going to impose any of these fines? up to these ridiculous numbers? No. Is the judge really gonna send anybody to jail? No. So, but I'll make the fine whatever you want, but the fine as proposed is more than what is in the ordinance the way that it reads. And I don't really think it matters because nobody's, as a practical matter, is going to jail. Nobody is going to pay $1,000 the first time that they have a rat in their house.
But shouldn't it be, it should be spelled out though, because that option is there. Why can't that be taken off the books?
Of what?
I mean, I don't believe that an ordinance, you should have to look up, I mean, it took you how long to look up the ordinance of where the other thing was applicable to? So, I mean, people are gonna be looking through other ordinances, of which there's 5 billion of them, too many as far as I'm concerned, to try and get this alleviated. I mean, Councilwoman Tedisco is looking there for 15 minutes. I think that the penalties should be applicable to this ordinance.
Well, when it is adopted, it will be in the book, and it says, it refers to the specific thing. Remember, you're looking at an ordinance in isolation as opposed to looking at the code after the ordinance has been adopted. I know, and I don't mean that as a criticism. What I'm saying is that this has been going on for years. The council always is, has, no, I shouldn't say always has a problem, but you have to have some confidence that when you put it all together that it's going to make some sense. But as I prefaced this all by saying, you tell me what to write and I'll write.
Well, if you can figure out how, because like I said, it's pretty expensive to remediate for any kind of pests. I mean, some people just don't have the money. So how else can it be done?
I think the bottom line point from our committee standpoint
Right.
was, and Mr. Renard, to your point about the penalty, I think it's a fair point. If it covers the entire section, it covers the entire section. Ultimately, it's not up to this council what that penalty is, it's up to a judge. However, I think the greater concern from our committee standpoint is that once this was discussed at the last council meeting, a lot of people reached out to us,
Right.
especially me, and were saying basically, why should all the onus be on the property owner when you might have a rat burrow on your property and it's not even really your fault? It could be in the vicinity, it burrows on your property. It could be as simple as you have a garden. That's food for rats, so you could have a burrow. And plenty of people said, look, I can take care of it myself. I can throw poison down the hole, close the hole, and be done. They could prove that they bought poison. They could show a receipt. They could take pictures where the hole was and where it's no longer because it's been covered up. I know personally somebody had reached out and they had to spend at least $200 on an exterminator because they had already retained the exterminator services for other work. So it's at least $200 to bring in an exterminator. So we didn't want to make the burden on the homeowner
Right.
unnecessarily.
Yeah,
You know,
because-
of course we want them to take care of it. I think people want to take care of it. Who wants rats on their property?
Right.
So.
And that was our main concern, really, that, we don't want things to be so overwhelming that the people aren't going to take care of it, other people aren't going to complain about it, and it's, just a little bit too much government. I mean, we're just trying to give a little bit of flexibility to the people that we're representing,
I just want to comment that I did speak to Ms. Megan about this matter, and I don't think she starts off with, you have to get a licensed exterminator when she has a rat complaint. They give the people many opportunities before she issues that order to rectify it themselves. She has a particular situation right now, and she cannot get the homeowner to cooperate. So without this, she's not able to enforce or have the problem resolved.
Right.
She told me on the telephone that she needs this, or there's nothing she can do about the problem.
Right.
She needs
The
what?
ordinance.
She needs
She needs you to make
enforcement.
it-
We
Yeah,
need to
it's
make
the
it
enforcement.
enforceable.
But the enforcement isn't it already enforced by,
No.
they have to go get the company
No.
exterminator?
No, except there's
No,
a
that's what you're
complaint.
preparing
Well-
to do now.
We don't have this ordinance in front of us right now. So this is making it difficult. We have this,
Oh,
You
wanna
do.
look at mine?
What you have from last time, Article 2 nuisances, specific nuisances, would be the ordinance. And the bone of contention is the last section of that draft that you have,
So you have it.
7D, 7D.
I
Failure to
can
provide
ask around
for-
if anybody wants to look
Yeah, it's just a
So this
page.
Article 2 is what essentially the ordinance will be? This is what it will say?
It's going into an ordinance, it's going on a section of the code that's,
More, okay.
yeah, that's larger.
Yeah, so the things we were changing was in,
7D on my
Seven.
paper.
But
Yes.
Megan told me, and said if you take out that part that you're proposing to take out, that that she can, I'm gonna use the word force.
Is there some kind of
Force the
compromise
resident to
that-
hire an exterminator, then the problem that she's dealing with will remain, and there's nothing she can
So
do.
she's saying do not change this.
She says, if you take that out of here, then she has no power to
That's
enforce.
Right.
And then she can't, what I think, and Councilwoman, I think you're trying to say is that you don't want somebody to roll out and just have to hire an exterminator. I don't think she comes out of the gate that way.
right.
And I think that she will go to this when she has to. This is not how she starts out with a rat problem.
Well,
I
she
did hear
did
from
say-
one resident that that was, as soon as the borough was found on the property, that homeowner was asked to get an exterminator in and prove it. That was even before we've even had this discussion.
Perhaps because there was, some level of neglect from the homeowner. If you have rats on your property.
I don't think they knew about it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know which
I mean-
homeowner we're talking about, and we're
Right,
not gonna
because
get
it
into
doesn't
personal
matter.
So
business.
is it possible to include in the ordinance some sort of escalation
Right,
that's spelled
a
out?
warning.
It says it's a warning, so we still have that enforcement,
Yeah.
but it's specifically spelled out that the actual owner is going to get a couple of warnings and
Right.
opportunities
Before
to do that,
you-
so that way we were
before you
still
take
given the
in that-
opportunity to enforce it.
That a resident said that that's what the right went to. I would ask Megan if it right went to that.
Mhm.
Because she's taking this one side of the story. Perhaps there was some you need to deal with.
Right.
And I'm going to use us as an example. Tony and I, we had this problem at our house. We had a garden, just like you said, and Tony was able to deal with it immediately, took care of it, and it was over. But if we neglected it, it would escalate.
Perhaps we could put something in there
Yeah, I mean, that
about
might be a good
escalation.
idea, that if they get a couple warnings and it's not taken care of, like I said, I'm just trying to look out for the people, because I know how expensive it is to
No,
do.
I understand, I just worry about taking that out completely, leave no enforcement at all.
Right.
Maybe work
So-
with the Medicare committee and research.
Mr. Renaud, do you have any suggestion about how we can word it?
Yeah.
So that it's an escalating, next,
A
so it's
compromise on that.
escalating, so it's a compromise?
Well, the only thing I could think of would be to give to have a specific period of time for notice, but the place that I'm having a problem with is, at some point, and again, this goes back to the judge. You have to hope that the judge is not going to throw somebody in jail, and you also have to hope that the person who represents the Board of Health is not going to come out here like a stormtrooper and issue summonses and order everybody to do things. I mean, that's an enforcement issue. It's like, it's like your traffic ordinances and your parking ordinances and everything else. I mean, you hope that the police will use an amount of discretion, that they're not going to, do things that are unreasonable, and you have to expect that the agent of the Board of Health is not going to do stuff that's unreasonable.
Well, I'm not gonna count on anything that's not in writing. I'm not counting on the judge, I'm not gonna count on any of that, because sometimes those things don't work out. And I don't wanna put undue pressure on the residents for something that we're gonna count on the judge not being over indulgent with putting out a fine. I just don't
Well,
want
as I
that to
said,
be-
I will write it any way you want.
As I said
But I
before,
am
I
not
think-
guaranteeing that it'll be enforceable, that's all. If you
I
start.
think the committee should go back and do some more research and see exactly what you want Mr. Dodd
All
to
right,
say.
well-
You can go review
All right, I have
it.
no problem. I'll call up Megan again, and I will ask her for her recommendation, but like I said, I just don't want it to be too much for the people.
No, and understandably, you can't.
Like we have right now, can we get whatever we get from Megan, I'll get it right across.
That's why I had her email this to me, so we had it
Just
ready
keep
so
that
I can
going.
present.
Okay,
That's all.
I'll email her tomorrow.
Okay, anything else for people now?
No, that's all, thank you, Mayor.
Okay, moving on, any unfinished business of the council?
Wait a minute, whoa. Get me first of all.
I apologize.
Okay, my turn, right?
Yes?
I sent you guys a memo on Friday about bulk for next year, and, can't find my memo. Oh, right here. Okay, so, does anybody have any questions, or if you're okay with those dates, and you want to
What
know the
was the
price?
dates again?
Sorry?
The dates again?
June 11th, October.
June 11th,
22nd.
October 22nd. Let's talk about the fee first, because of the first part of it. So I gave you the formula. It's going to cost $100.18 per permit for you. Right now, you're at $90. You sell permits for $90, so.
As I've said before, because not everyone puts out 750 tons and the administrative cost is not to the exact penny, I'd like to round down. We've been doing that in the past, and bulk has not cost us by rounding down just a bit.
Well, I'd like
So,
to keep it the same.
Ideally, I'd like to keep it the same as long as we wouldn't be in jeopardy.
Might be.
Huh? What would,
First of all, they released the rate, the tipping fee rate in June, so I'm giving you a rate that they released in June. So next June, they might change it, which happened last year, which you didn't raise it last year. But it did go up a little from the conversation I had with you this time last year, by the time you actually ran the program, because Utilities Authority changes it in June. They must be on a fiscal calendar.
And what we're referring to is the Union County Utilities Authority. They
Right.
set the tipping rate, which is how much it costs to transport trash all around the county. And that's what's going into this whole calculation of what it costs for you to do a permit of doing bulk, $80.
Right, and then your load and transport, you're on a 3-year contract, you're in the 3rd year of that contract in 2018. That was an escalating situation, so you're at $53.95 per household. So,
And who's picking this up?
Waste Management.
Waste Management has it still.
Contract, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, you could be, the thing is that, there's no place, if that happened in our budget to absorb that.
Right.
You fund what you're supposed to get in. You started this off 3 years ago, this will be the 3rd year of this way, and we kept it at $90 the whole time, we changed it, but it has gone up.
does it cost the town any money?
But it will cost the town money.
I didn't get the bills yet for the last bulk. I don't think so.
Well, if it hasn't cost the town money, I don't see any reason why it can't stay the
But
same.
could, you asked me if there's a chance for a risk, I have to be honest with you, it could. Now it's $10 more than you're charging. So, I don't want to have to tell you that it went over and then you say, how'd you let that happen, so.
I think 95 would be appropriate just in case there's a scaling price and.
And if there's not an upscale in the price?
There's no
No
upscale
guarantee.
price.
It's
No
gonna cost.
upscale. This is the price, okay, and you're allowed to put out 750 pounds
Right.
of garbage. Not every house puts out 750 pounds, and we watch real closely to make sure nobody puts over 750 pounds. So when they pick up the garbage and take it to the dump, the tipping fee is collective, not individual. So if I put out 500 pounds and you put out 850 pounds, because it's not an exact
Right.
science, they kind of offset each
Right.
other. If next year, every single resident puts out 750 pounds of bulk by some crazy reason, you would go over. But has that ever happened? No. Could that happen? Yeah, I guess. But it has not happened. And I didn't check this last time, and I don't think,
How much was the fee last year?
90, we didn't raise it
I was
last
saying,
year.
how much was the fee that they were charging, that they said that they were gonna charge for last year?
You mean the vendor?
Correct.
The second year, which was this year, 2017, was $51.95 per permit, and 2016 was $49.95 per permit. And of course, the tipping fee has gone up, as well as the load and transfer fee over the last 3 years.
We kept it flat for
We kept it
3
flat.
years, and you see the transport fees going up 3 to 4% per year. And the tipping fees going up 2 to 3%.
Can we just take the administrator's
I would-
recommendation? to
I would
go
agree with
The
Liz.
fee that she
$100
came up to, $100 is fine.
Yeah.
As far as I'm concerned, because we've left
Okay.
it flat for 3 years.
Well, I'm not happy with that.
I like
Yeah,
compromising at
consensus.
95 personally.
I would be willing to go
Because
along with the
we've been
95.
able to with, so the tipping fee plus load and transport fee, we're looking at $91.07, plus 10% administrative fee, which I've spoken about before. I think we can safely say $95 will be okay. $90 is risky, I see the point, but
And we have 95. and
I
100.
prefer, I also will say that, I mean, this is how much it costs. It seems more logical for us to go $100, in my opinion.
Well, I would prefer 95, preferably I want bulk back, but I mean, if we're gonna have to do this, I would do 95.
I would do 100. I would. I think it's a
Since we
responsible,
have a 4-2 unofficial vote.
responsible thing to do.
And then you have a 4-2 official vote.
I
It's
guess so.
unofficial, Sarah Ellen.
Hard?
We
Right.
have an unofficial $100 charge.
I mean,
If I could just make a comment, maybe to
Before we
persuade.
go further, I
Okay.
honestly wasn't making a recommendation for 100. I personally would go in the middle at 95, but again, it's not, I'm not the one, I don't make the decisions. but-
As I was trying to indicate before, when we see 10% administrative fee, that's not exact science. The 750 pounds that each would be putting out is not an exact science because there are plenty of times when residents put under 750, and like Ms. Ariam said, they monitor to make sure they're not going over, at least not by any kind of extreme amount. So that's where, in past practice, our philosophy was, you take the total per permit, which right now we're looking at $100, and you can scale it back a little bit. And we've
Is
been
that what we
doing
did last year?
$5,
So
yes.
the
Yeah, we
total
did.
per permit last
Each
year
year.
was,
It should have been more last year,
what was
we
the
settled on
total?
90.
Right, so for example, if last year was 90, I don't have the paperwork in front of me, but I would bet it was probably, mid-90s
so it was
before.
in the mid-90s and we
You-
went down to 90.
Right,
Right.
usually we just
And we
scale
were
it down
okay.
about $5.
Is that what you're saying, Tina? Is that, it was in the mid-90s from what we remember for the total per permit?
The first year was 91, 97, and you started off with 90.
Okay,
And then the second year, I honestly, I didn't bring that piece of paper, I apologize, but it was like 90, I think $97 or something like that,
It's
if
a
I
little bit
remember.
more each year.
Yeah.
I would just rather see the increment go up. If
And
it's
you
going to
stayed
go
at
up, only
90.
$5, not $10.
The administrative fee is really the cost involved in the mailing, which we don't do a separate mailing anymore. We stay on point to do one mailing, so you're not spending extra money. At the beginning, when we first started this, we had to do a separate mailing to do work. A little delayed there. So you're not spending extra money on that. What you're really spending money on is, of course, the time that it takes the office to prepare the permits and all that stuff, and the mailing, which you're doing about 50 permits per event. So now it's just down to one mailing in that permit. That's it. We don't do, it's really time consuming and expensive when we do separate mailing. But we're not doing that anymore.
well, I think a $95 compromise is good, and then you see what happens next year. Maybe they won't go up next year.
Yeah. Well, next year you either got to go out for bid or we can extend this contract. I got to look at it.
All right, so we can worry about that
So your
next year.
recommendation is 95, that's your
To
recommendation?
be safe, that's what I would do if it was my decision.
Okay?
It's
All right.
fine.
I feel more comfortable knowing that from last year, if it was 96, we went to 90, and we were fine, and I feel more comfortable with the compromise of 95.
Go with 95? Okay. Sarah Ellen, 95.
Okay. And then next matter of the dates. The dates for the programs. This year, I moved the spring bump up a little, and even though we had this conversation and you approved it, you all kind of gave me a meeting about that. So I put it back to the beginning of June. You can't be the first week in June because of Forward Rocks. So I picked the second week. I personally think they're too close together, both the spring and fall. And I personally think that June is a horrible month for people. Kids graduating. There's just a lot going on in people's lives, a lot of weddings, a lot of things like that. I don't think people want to clean out their garages. That's just my opinion. So I moved it up last year to a little bit earlier. As I said,
Did it before Memorial Day weekend.
Well,
Yeah, and I
like
think there was a
that.
lot of complaints about that, I think I
Did you,
brought that up.
you do
after
the
fact.
townwide yard sale around this?
I do it right after it, so you have the town-wide, and then the bulk follows immediately after. And then people are very used to that, so they put out their stuff, and they don't put it away. They just leave it out, and we come the next day. Bulk. So that works out very well. I did not get any complaints whatsoever about the timing of the program for 2017.
I got a couple complaints about the second pickup.
Well, I do it around the same time every year. I don't know. My office did not get any complaints. So anyway, I went back to what it usually was, which was the beginning of June, and then the same time. It's been the same time in October for as long as I can remember. As long as we've been doing it. So
I think the key is having it coincide with the townwide yard
Right.
sale in the spring. So that's the weekend of June 9th. It would make sense that the people don't have to bring in their things that didn't sell, if they want to just throw it out.
I don't think I'm sure there are people who would prefer it May, there's people who would prefer June. To me, it's 6 on one hand, half a dozen on the other. So I don't really have a strong opinion about the date, but I'm fine with it.
June 16th.
Well, it's June 11th.
that's Father's Day weekend. You don't want to do that. That's Father's Day weekend. It's no good.
Yeah, we don't want the
June
public-
11th.
June 11th
starts
bulk
on
pickup.
Monday and they go
9
through-
and 10 is townwide. There's nothing, it doesn't coincide with Garwood Rocks. And the kids are still in school, so people could devote their time to, what they want to do with
All right, so
it.
what are the dates again?
Townwide yard sale will be June 9 and 10, 2018, and the spring bulk program will be the week of June 11th. The last few bulks it's only been one day, because you only have like 40 in and out one day, but you have the whole week. And then the second one would be October 22nd. They're both Mondays. They start on a Monday, and if you ever got a lot, like the first year we did, we had like 180, so it took the whole week. But now we don't get that many anymore because people have this every year, and you're not seeing that many anymore.
Well, plus you have somebody that picks up stuff and he's like cheaper. Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Branford went out for bid on this, and their bid's came in like over $300 each.
Wow.
300
Yeah.
Yeah.
for the same 750 pounds?
I don't know how they bid it, but
Right.
I just heard that's how they came in.
The only thing that I would recommend, can we put this on the website, on the calendar, we have a little stars.
It's always up there. Always. Always. But it's not prepared yet. I didn't start preparing the calendar.
Yeah, it was on there last year.
It's always up there.
We also have the publication too.
It's always, the garbage, it's in the garbage schedule, so that's on the website. And then I separately put it up there, just by itself, at the beginning of the year. After I make the garbage schedule, I put it up. It's always up there.
It's always on like the little calendars that come up. And I didn't see it on there until someone else put it up.
I might not put it on the calendar, but it's right on, if you click on DPW, it's right there. Bulk services, the paperwork, everything. I could put it on the calendar, I just don't remember to put it on the calendar.
Yeah, another star would be good.
Yeah, if I don't remember to put it on the calendar, please feel free to ask me to put it on the calendar.
Only if I remember, then I'll.
Yeah, they see, we don't have that problem. But when I look at it, I'll probably know.
So we establish our dates now, Sarah?
Yes, everybody free.
Yes.
I agree.
Okay, that's all I have.
Any unfinished business? Or something small? A reminder, the Mayor Wellness Campaign will conduct an adult wellness program on Thursday, November 9th at 7 p.m. in our Garwood ShopRite, Victoria. The in-store dietitian will be leading the program. Topics will consist of quick and easy meal prep tips, healthy snacking, lower sugar options, and eating on a budget. The tour is free of charge, but registration is required. The tour is limited to 20 participants. Please stop by the service desk or call the store directly to register. All right, thank you. Any new business? Hearing none. Move on. Comments or matters for discussion from members of council. Councilwoman Blumenstock.
Just one thing, Mayor. If I can ask the appropriate committee chairs about where we are on the feasibility of hiring a part-time property enforcement officer. I know finance needs to be involved, obviously, I guess it was laws and
I
license.
don't think we went into that last time, did we? Did we discuss that at the meeting before?
We mentioned that we were investigating
Yeah.
it because we have to see if we would need to establish the position first. Is there,
Yeah, we-
do you have
yeah,
an
we brought
answer
that
on
up.
To
that?
establish the position, and you also need to fix the property maintenance code.
Right.
Well, we
We are
asked
ready, we are ready to have the property maintenance
Right.
code fixed. I've said that to Mr. Anad. However, he recommended that we are prepared to hire someone. Otherwise, having an ordinance with no one to enforce it makes no
This is
sense.
not in our code.
All right, so that, because we
Right.
asked that question.
That was what the question was. In other
Yeah.
words, in order to finish the ordinance, and I do recall that I got it, it has to indicate who's going to enforce the ordinance, and I don't know that that's, I guess you're resolving that now, so now if we have, who's going, I don't know whether, and still don't know, are we going to hire somebody for the position, or are we going to expect somebody that has an existing position to do it? If we're going to hire somebody for the position, and we're going to have a position, then we're going to have to adopt an ordinance to create the position.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
we
think we
need-
should just create the position,
Right,
and
that's
then we'll
what we
figure out
wanted
who
to
we're
know.
gonna put in it. Could be one of us, or it could be an outsider, but we don't have to name that in the ordinance, correct?
And we did have that shared services conversation, but it wasn't worth it. That
They're not really
entity
looking
told
for a
us.
shared service, what
Right,
they said was
so-
you can hire our person.
Exactly, so
Right.
that's why we would need to
You
establish a
can hire
position.
anybody.
Right. So can we direct Ms. Ariema to
Well,
take the
let's do the
necessary
ordinance
action?
first.
Right,
The ordinance for the
to
position?
establish the position.
He's gonna do the ordinance.
right.
Mr.
Right.
Dodd does the
Yeah,
ordinance.
okay.
Once the ordinance is passed, then I'll work with the chief on filling the position.
Okay,
Because it's not just gonna be me, he's involved.
sure.
So then we'll see what we put in there, so we need to know, more information to hire someone. But the hiring part, that's the easy part.
Right.
That takes a couple days to get that done, to get a name on the agenda. and look at
And
it.
there's a lot of people that were interested in that position, so.
Good. So let's get the ordinance out for a vote so we can see if we're going to make this happen or not.
Move forward. You want to start?
That's all, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay. Councilman Kukrow?
Nothing, Mayor.
Councilman Lazaro?
Thank you, Mayor. I just have a question, Mr. Ron. So if we move forward with the contract for the rec center, is it something we could pursue in sending a letter to the architect and/or contract of the rec center to inform them of this, if we decide to pass that resolution?
Yes.
So is that something that you could send that letter to those companies, letting them know that this is what we have to do? And
This is the
we
cost.
would- we would really appreciate
Yeah.
it.
I don't want to discuss
Yes, but
strategy.
Yeah,
I
I'll
will
just-
send,
I'll just send
a
them a letter.
My
I'll let
intention
you
was
know.
to do that, but yes.
Okay,
I
thank
will
you.
do that.
Appreciate that. That's all.
Thank you. Councilman Petrozelli?
Nothing, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilman Sardo?
Thank you, Mayor. The one thing I want to bring up tonight, I urge the mayor and council to take a look at ordinance 17-25, the adoption of the, this is an introduction, for the adoption of the South Avenue 2 redevelopment plan. I feel it's best served that this goes to the planning board instead of us introducing this tonight. In this adoption of this plan, dwelling units will include, or may include, a mix of 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom units. No more than 50% of the units should be 3-bedroom units. I feel that this is, we should not be the appropriate authority to do this at this point. We could be the final authority, but at this juncture, I believe that this belongs in the planning board and for their recommendations into the plan. I believe that we should not be doing this at this point in time, and I feel that we should be, vote no, do not introduce this, and I let the planning board come back to us and with their recommendations, then we can introduce it.
Thank you. Anything else, sir?
That's it.
Council President Tedesco?
Mayor, to follow up with that about the Russo 2 plan, we do have our planner and our redevelopment attorney here tonight. Perhaps they would like to speak to this either now or at a later time. Also, we have our compliance hearing with the court on October 30th, so maybe Mr. Runahad, if you could give us some input on if we do not pass that ordinance for introduction tonight, 17-25, does that put us in jeopardy? Because we did have certain requirements that were stated to us earlier this year about what we needed to get done, and if we don't do them, will we be in jeopardy? That's my question.
We have a compliance hearing coming up on the 30th, and part of the compliance is complying with the complying with the provisions of what the court prescribed for us in the initial hearing, that is the fairness hearing. The order does require that the tasks set forth in the settlement agreement, one of which was all the things that you mentioned, be completed actually within 120 days of the order, but we're past that deadline, but we're coming up for a hearing on the 30th. I would rather not discuss in a public meeting what could possibly happen if we're not in compliance. I can tell you that there are a number of unpleasant possibilities. I don't want, as I said, I don't want to prejudice the borough's position because I don't know what it is that's going to transpire here this evening. But we have an agreement which was adopted, and we have a compliance hearing upcoming on the 30th. Other than that, I don't think I would be prudent for me to comment at this point.
Well, excuse me, is it prudent for me? Because I'm going to have to agree with Councilman Sarno. I mean, you know, obviously people know how I feel about this whole thing, but I don't believe that we should be rushing through something that is something that's so uncertain, no matter what the court states. I'm sure you can get an extension of 2 weeks. And, you know, basically this was all thrown on us today. I'm reading all this stuff today, so I don't foresee a problem with Councilman Sarno's recommendation.
Well, at some point, I don't know, Mr. Renard, maybe you could tell us when would be the appropriate time to have our two professionals speak to the Russo II plan. But
well, whenever you're going to discuss the plan, it's up for a public hearing later. But I mean, if you want to discuss it now, then it's just fine to discuss it now.
Because it's only.
I'm sorry, it's wrong. It's not a public. It's not a public hearing. So I guess now would be the time.
Okay. And I just want to point out too, you know, this council was all on board, pretty much taking the reins on redevelopment and negotiating those types of plans and agreements last fall. Now you wanted the control in the council's hands, right?
It still is in the, no.
It's still in control of the council's hands.
Of course, but
that hasn't changed. It's always going to fall to us. I'm saying for this particular plan, this should go to the planning board first. We're not changing the units. It's still going to be 52 units. That's not changing. What I'm trying to recommend here is that let the planning board go forth with this. I mean, some of these buildings don't even have elevators and things like that. That's stuff that the planning board can add value before it comes to us right now. And that's why I'm saying, let it go there. That's what I'm trying to get at. We're going to be compliant. I want to be compliant with the court. I don't want to get sued. But you know what? We also have to make sure we're doing the appropriate thing. They're the land use experts, not us.
It's going to the planning board after this.
Yes, for comments.
For comments.
I don't want that. I want them to do this first. I don't want just comments and then things like that. Not for something like this. If this is 50% of this could be 3 bedrooms. You can have buildings with no elevators and stuff. Once you introduce it, forget it. Trying to get that thing to come back, and it will not happen. I really recommend it to really think this over.
Can I ask a question? So wasn't there recently a meeting between 3 council members and 3 planning board members? And wasn't that part of that process was to sort of come together and look at this? Is that,
right?
Can someone speak
The
to
mayor
that?
did set up that committee that you're mentioning, the joint committee, and we have had a few meetings for the last couple months since that committee was established. And you're right, that was the mission of the committee. And also, the council has been at the forefront of negotiations in preparation for our settlement proposal that we sent to the courts in April, I believe it was. So, I mean, this is kind of
Who's on the committee?
going a different way from what we've been doing for the last year, at least, that the council's really taken the reins on this, compared to with Russo 1. It was really in the planning board's hands and negotiated there very, very far, ready for introduction last fall. But that's when this council said, let's table the plan, let's bring on a redevelopment attorney, let's bring on a financial advisor. We did those things, and we did the final negotiation for that plan. So this council's been in the driver's seat really the last year, compared to previously, it was more so the planning board being in the driver's seat.
I agree with the
So-
council being the driver's seat. Unfortunately, I don't like the whole conclusion of the whole council and the planning board. So who was on the committee for that who was on the committee, Mayor?
Councilman Sarno, Councilwoman Blumenstock, Council President Tedesco. We have the planning chairman, Mr. Green, Vice Chair Catherine Bellagio, and one of the members, Craig McCarron.
Okay.
So maybe we can have our professionals discuss the Russo 2 plan.
I can start really, I guess my Paul is here, so we can talk to the substance of the plan. I'll talk to the process raised by Councilman Sarno. There's the plan, regardless of what happened, the plan needs to go to the planning board for their review and recommendation. There's two ways to do that. You can introduce an ordinance and refer it over, or you can adopt a resolution and refer it over. It doesn't get there without a referral from this body. So my understanding, and I will just state my understanding, let Mr. Renaud comment if appropriate. My understanding is that the court was looking for an ordinance, an introduced ordinance, with the idea that there would be action sometime before, I believe, November 30th, and the only way to do that would be to introduce the ordinance tonight, have it go to the planning board, have the planning board take whatever action and refer it back for action, I guess at your November 14 meeting. So that's the process. That's what has to happen under the local redevelopment housing law. You know, if you, for whatever reason, choose not to introduce the ordinance, I guess we can call it audible and make the ordinance a resolution and just have it referred over, but I don't know where that leaves you in terms of your COA
I think that would be the better
obligation.
option.
Well, and that's for you to decide, Councilman.
Thank you.
That's my point is, I'm not sure if that is in the borough's interest, but that's not my role in representing you here. That's Mr. Renaud. So that's the process. If there's any questions about the substance, I'll defer it to Mr. Greigel.
I thought it was my understanding that it didn't matter if it went a little bit past the 30th.
I will allow Mr. Renaud to comment on that.
No, I don't know where that, that impression might have come from, but here's what happened. The South 2 plan was supposed to, according to the original order and agreement, be done within 4 months of April 30th. In other words, it was supposed to have been done, passed, signed, everything 2 months ago. Because we were negotiating, and when I say we, I mean the borough, not myself, but Mr. Northgrave and the rest of the people in the borough, were negotiating in good faith with the developer. The developer did not complain to the court. This is where I'm uncomfortable, because I don't want to put you in a position without knowing what you're going to decide to do to answer these questions specifically. You had an obligation to build within 4 months. The builder did not press because you were negotiating. Now, I don't know what the builder's position is going to be if this ordinance is not introduced. I say that because I simply do not know. I don't know what the court's position is going to be if we show up on October 30th and say, we not only don't have a redevelopment plan adopted, we not only don't have a redevelopment agreement entered into, but we haven't even introduced the ordinance. When I say that, I don't know, I mean, I don't know, because that wasn't what was anticipated when you entered into the agreement that we adopted way back in April. There are a number, and I said this, I don't want to give people suggestions, there's a number of unpleasant things that could happen. I don't know whether any of them are going to happen. I imagine that the developer would be unhappy. I don't know what complaints the developer is going to make to the court. I don't know what the court's reaction is going to be. I don't know whether the court's going to decide to revoke immunity and tell you that builder's remedy lawsuits are permitted. I don't know whether any of that's going to happen. I don't want to, I'm not trying to threaten, I'm telling you I don't know. I mean, we might go and possibly it's not disastrous, or it may be. I don't know. That wasn't what was anticipated when we entered into an agreement back in March, and when I went to court in April, and it wasn't what we represented to the court was going to happen. So, really, if you want to discuss in detail what the legal ramifications are, I would suggest that we close session this meeting, and I'll have a little more candor for you in terms of what can happen. But
Well, like I said, we know what the ramifications are for what we've threatened with it for the last couple of years already. I mean.
I think the bottom line here is it's the 11th hour, stakes are high. I do think we should just mention with the plan here that at the Russo Town Hall meeting that took place at the school, obviously some folks had come forward and had expressed concern about the amount of municipal parking spots, because we were looking at, based on the Russo 1 plan, 18 parking spots inclusive of the 8 or 9, depending on how you look at it, directly next door to the firehouse, which we currently own. And so that was something that we were able to get more spots from the developer, from Russo. He agreed to that. This plan that's before us tonight for introduction was agreeable to him, and that's where it says in A, land uses 1B, it talks about public parking, and it mentions that there will be additional spots there. Basically shared parking, because at first, quite honestly, why give us more parking spots? As he said at the Russo Town Hall meeting, it's not his responsibility to do that. However, it's a negotiation. And so we were able to come with a compromise. Essentially, one of the times we need more parking here for municipal purposes is work week during the day. So, 8:30 to 5 or something like that. And he needs more visitor parking for the people that will potentially buy over at Russo 2, visitor parking for nights and weekends. So that was the compromise there. So we're looking at closer of a total of 26 to 28 parking spots. Basically, he gave us an additional row at that part.
And there's also senior meetings twice a month.
Yes, that's
So
correct.
you're not going to be able to accommodate.
Well, not necessarily. This does help quite a bit. There will be a parking garage and surface level parking across the street as well. It certainly helps. It's better than going in and saying, oh, well, we're just going to accept 18. We pushed for more and we got more. We also did get a greater setback from West Street to 20 feet. So I just wanted to point out those two things, since that committee that the mayor formed had been providing feedback on the plan, the draft, and I was personally at negotiations with the developer, with our professionals. Councilwoman Blumenstock was able to jump on the conference call. Councilman Sarno was obviously at work. I happened to be available at that particular time of the meeting, so I was able to go, and we were able to get a couple concessions out. So I might have done Mr. Dreigel's job more tonight with saying that, but.
And in the process, there is a meeting of the planning board on November 8th, so that might be some.
We're not doing any studies on school-age children on 3-bedroom units. All that revenue that could be coming from the other side of Bristol 1 could also be sucked into what's going to happen over here. I have a lot of concerns. 4 buildings, you're going to lose a lot of open space in the middle. You're going to lose a lot with that particular thing. And I think that's something where the plan board can add that value. That's what they're there for. They are land use experts. For us to go ahead and do this without all the experts that we have in town and not having add their input first, I think we're really doing a disservice to Garland.
So you're in favor of a resolution?
Yes.
I don't understand the difference. So can you explain why we should go a resolution as opposed to?
You have a better chance at doing more positive changes prior to introduction than you do once you introduce this particular plan. You're not going to be able to amend it to the level that I'm even suggesting. It's best to do a resolution now. That way there's a little bit more leeway with the planning board to do some more positive things.
Even with the risk associated with the special master on October 3rd?
With that risk, there's a bigger risk with 3 bedrooms over here that I'm willing to take.
You think that it's going to change?
We're not changing the 52 units, we're still going to be compliant. In fact, our resolution, okay, that we're passing, that does the overlay, that talks about the development fees and whatnot, it doesn't even list 17-120 or 17-25 on it. So I really, for me, I think the real risk is not even letting it go to the planning board. That's the real risk out of all this, if you ask me.
Perhaps you want to ask the redevelopment attorney about amendments and what's allowed and what the process is.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was actually just rising just for that purpose. Regardless, to your question, Councilman, if you introduce the ordinance tonight and the changes that Councilman Sarno suggests are made or recommended by the planning board, those changes will come back here. If they're accepted by this body, you will have to reintroduce the ordinance and then re-adopt. So I laid out for you the process. Substantively, to answer your question, there really isn't a difference, because if they do make a substantial change, then the ordinance would have to be reintroduced, and in the other scenario, if you do a resolution tonight, the ordinance would be introduced at that meeting. So, and if there aren't substantive changes, then the ordinance can go forward. So the only advantage here is that the ordinance may go forward if there are no substantive changes. Councilman Sarno anticipates that the planning board would make substantial changes, and if he's correct, then again, you would reintroduce. If they don't, then you would introduce, and then there would be a vote, and then it would be up or down. So it's, there's a different process, but substantively, I'm not sure if it's maybe a distinction without a difference.
Thank you for the clarification.
I have a question, Bob. How does that play into the October 3rd?
Well, I think that based on what Mr. Northgrave said, that if there's no difference in the end result in the process, that the council should introduce the ordinance, because that's what's contemplated. If you decide for some reason to amend it and the builder is unhappy with it, we'll find that out later on.
Then you could still take us to court, I believe.
Yes.
For something else.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. The rest of the council knows and the public. This originally was set at about, I believe it was 90 to 100 apartments. We got to this point by negotiating to 52 for sale, because this is what we heard from the public, that they wanted more for sale units rather than rentals. So this was something that came along with, the number of 3 bedrooms came along with that number of 52 townhouses. Now, I will say, being in on that negotiation meeting, we pushed, obviously, the lower number of 3 bedrooms there is, the better we would like it. And we pushed, it really did not go well. It did not go well, and I have to say, they did say that they would find us not in good faith, which we can all assume we know what that means, and yes, they're going to say that, and I know you'll say what, that it doesn't matter. But I think, having heard from Mr. Northgrave and Mr. Renaud, it doesn't make any sense not to pass the intro at this point, and then see what the planning board does with their recommendations.
We were not guaranteed for sale units either.
We were not guaranteed, however, the discussions that were going on in this negotiations were about for sale units.
Well, we'll
They
see what
seem
the market's
intent
doing
on
back
doing
then.
that.
Right, I mean, by the time we're talking construction, it could be 5 years from now, but, and couldn't we all, I guess, but, essentially, this is introduction, this is not adoption of the ordinance. Again, 11th hour, high stakes, Mr. Renaud talked about October 30th. This has been a long process. The council decided to take the reins last fall.
And whenever it was negotiated,
So-
those were the plans that the developer had on negotiating anyway. If you think that was something new that he brought to the table, it was not.
No,
I'm sorry.
that's not true, it was new.
I'm sorry.
Previously, it would have been about 100 more rental
I
units.
don't believe so.
Well, that's what's in writing,
Let
so.
me say this, when you want to talk about the reduction of units, you really have to thank, our planning board engineering firm is the one that was really instrumental in getting that lowered down. And the bedroom makeup really was not decided upon, that was just a concept plan brought to us by them, so I'll
Planning
disagree
board,
with you.
I thought we did that on council, knock the units down from.
Bob used it for his negotiations.
Okay. Is there anything else? Hearing none, we'll move on then. Public comment, is anyone in the audience that wishes to address the mayor and council? Please step to the microphone. You state your full name and address. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes.
We're on the clock, so.
We need-
Do you-
Is there anything you'd like to say?
Questions on the substance?
No, I mean, do you need us to stay, or?
Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Bravo?
Maybe it might be helpful for them to say, in case there's clarification.
Yeah, because we're going to go right into the next meeting anyway.
Right.
I don't mind that.
Ms. Council.
Mr. Mayor, Council, how are you tonight? In your stead, 320 Hickory Avenue, Garwood. I don't say this too often, so I'm going to say it first, okay? I agree with Councilman Sarno and Councilwoman Kukrow. There's a huge difference what council is doing here in terms of making the first reading and sending it to the planning board versus sending it to the planning board resolution. Key thing to me is what Mr. Northridge mentioned, but kind of soften it a little bit. Two things. The first thing is that you're only giving the planning board 35 days to respond here. The second is the fact that if we do make changes, as we just did recommend with the overlay ordinance, you have to reintroduce it. Council has 2 meetings in November, you have 2 meetings in December. Okay, it is not the 11th hour. You do have time. The planning board did make substantive recommendations, as I indicated the first time around, and I agree with Councilman Sarno, and I want to appreciate and state for the record that he is bringing to this council what the planning board has asked him to do, which is to please get the plan back to the planning board. We have not seen what Mr. Greiber has presented. You're not giving us a lot of time to review it. There could very easily be major changes, and I just really think it is better, it's wiser to send it back to the planning board first. One last comment is, I don't pretend to know the negotiations, I'm not involved, but it is my understanding that the council cannot require it to be condo versus rental. If the economy changes and he suddenly can't sell them, he's going to rent them. Government cannot, whether you have a redevelopment plan or not, government cannot tell a developer, sorry, you have to sell these or let them lay fallow for, ever. He's going to rent them. So though I don't know the negotiations, I don't know what went on, but I don't think you can require that anyway. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor, ladies and gentlemen of the council, members Patterson, 325 Will Avenue. I was at the Fair Share hearing, Bob knows. Anyway, Russo at that point, when they were giving us 180 days, which is approximately this period now, I remember Russo's lawyer, Mr. Mink, standing up and saying, well, the other Russo project is moving along right now, and then, we'd like to see some kind of resolution of the ordinances for that by September, right? Is that what he was saying? Yeah, he wanted to expedite it, where he didn't want to wait 180 days.
4 months, that's what I indicated before, yes.
All right, yeah, by September. At that point, Mr. Renard was representing us, no doubt about it, and we agreed, right, that we could expedite it, but I just don't.
That had been agreed to in the settlement agreement before the hearing. That had already been agreed to.
Oh, was it? Okay, I was just wondering if that was the first time it was being brought up, was in front of Judge
No,
Cass.
I thought you had you have the settlement agreement.
Maybe, you're talking stacks of paper now. Right?
You were there.
I've got it.
Yeah, I was there,
Yes, you were.
and that's what I'm bringing up, that,
Right.
yes, he asked for a shorter period to expedite it, which Bob Renard agreed to, and I'm just wondering if.
I didn't agree to it. The council agreed to it back on March 27th. I don't make any.
That was within that agreement.
That was within the agreement. That was part of.
I'd have to revisit the agreement just to see the wording. So anyway, but yes, okay, so we are overdue on that. I guess it's nice of Mr. Russo to not press any issues, but just moving forward, yeah, we do have this special committee of 3 council, 3 planning boards, and this is the first time, this meeting is the first time, and Sarah said that there was a couple of meetings, that actually the public is is getting some information of what's coming out of that meeting in detail, surprisingly, which is great, you know, for transparency. And I'd just like to say, moving forward, I mean, these special redevelopment committee meetings, maybe there should be some kind of like an overview that, yes, we met, you know, on so-and-so a date, and we basically discussed additional parking or something like that. Just some general idea for the public, just so we're not blindsided. I mean, it did raise my eyebrows that he wanted to put 100 units over there, you know, and I guess, oh, thank God, we're down to 52 units. I'm excited. So anyway, so just some kind of like ongoing overview when we have it. So, the rec bids, nobody really talked about it. I guess if someone talked about it a little further.
I'll talk about it in that building grounds report.
In the buildings, okay. That's it. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Linda Purley, 55 4th Avenue. I just want to talk about this disgusting piece of trash I got in the mail on Saturday.
Well, that is a political document. Just realize that.
Yes, I just want to make a comment because it involves one of the councilwomen at Desco.
Thank you.
And it also states on here that it was sent and paid for by the Garwood Republican Municipal Committee and by Joe Sarno, the treasurer. I would just like to personally say to Councilwoman Tedesco that I never saw this. I'm a committee member. I never saw it. I certainly never would have approved it. I know at least 4 of my fellow committee members never saw it, never reviewed it, never would have approved it. And I just want to make everyone aware of that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
At this time, anyone else? Seeing none, we'll ask for.
Yeah, if I could respond to just,
Yes.
Just something Mr. Neerstedt said about the for sale. No, the council can't require that it's for sale. They had come with the proposal of 190 to 100 rentals, and we asked if they could consider doing for sale, at which point it became the 52 townhouses. No, you're right. In 5 years, whenever this gets done, who knows what the market's like. But they have, and we're hoping they stay in good faith, said that they will market them as for sale, which is why they went to townhomes instead of apartments. So while you're correct, yes, we're not requiring them. It was just put forth as a sort of negotiation.
I would just like to add, I don't want to dump on Bill Bierstadt, but I have to say that his complaint that if it was referred as an ordinance and the planning board would only have 35 days, we don't have 35 days. We're not have close to 35 days.
Right.
So
That's just the ordinance. That's statute.
What I'm saying is we don't have 35 days. That I can tell you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Anyone else? Hearing none, I'll move a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We'll move on, council. Please rise for a moment of silence, salute to the flag.
Allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Adequate notice of this meeting is provided to the Westfield Ledger, advertised on January 5th, 2017. Notification was sent to the Star Ledger, properly posted on the Municipal Public Bulletin Board, filed in the office of the Municipal Clerk, informing the public time and place according to provisions of the Open Public Meeting Law, Chapter 231, BL 1975. Roll call, Ms. Ariano.
Mayor Lombardo.
Here.
Councilman Blumenstock. Here. Councilman Kukrow.
Here.
Councilman Lazaro.
Here.
Councilman Petrozelli.
Here.
Councilman Sarno.
Here.
And Council President Tedesco.
Here.
Ms. Ariano, minutes?
Regular workshop of the mayor and council held on October 10th, 2017.
Do I have a motion to accept the minutes as presented?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Sarah Communications.
New Jersey State League of Municipalities Mayor's Advisory.
Receive and file.
Union County Board of Chosen Freeholders Ordinance.
Receive and file.
Township of Springfield Resolution.
Receive and file.
Lorraine Valley School Authority Committee meeting.
Receive and file.
Bruce Patterson concerning solution to parking problem.
Receive and file.
James Matthew concerning municipal conflict of interest.
Receive and file.
Recreation Commission minutes.
Receive and file.
Planning Board minutes. Receive
and file. Public hearing on ordinance 17-21, 17-22, and 1723 as advertised in the Westfield Leader. Ms. Ariema, please read ordinance 17-21 by title only.
Yes, Mayor. Affordable Housing Ordinance. An ordinance to enact Article 14, Affordable Housing, Chapter 106, Land Use of the Code of the Borough of Berwick to address the requirements of the Fair Housing Act and the Uniform Housing Affordability Controls regarding compliance with the borough's affordable housing obligation.
Do you receive any correspondence?
None, Mayor.
Is anyone present who wish to be heard concerning 17-21?
Evening, Council, Mayor. I stand in support of this, and I ask that Council, I think it's important to actually adopt this unanimously. And what I mean by that is not that I support every word that's in it. I think it's clear from my statements at the planning board meeting that I don't fully agree with every aspect of it. I wish that the council, the redevelopment attorney, and the planner had actually used the overlay zone on South Avenue and replicated it on North Avenue over the mall there, rather than having housing down at the paperwork company. I think that advances the master plan by having that development as close to the train station as you can get, because it's immediately adjacent to it, rather than having the housing down the paperwork. That is not consistent with our master plan. We need to have radals. We need to have commercial development along North Avenue, and that paperwork company, I fully believe, is not appropriate for housing, and that the North Avenue Mall area is. I also have concern, and I've been stated on the record as saying this, that there should be higher density at, I'll call it Russo 1, on the north side of South, as opposed to Russo 2 on the south side, because next to the railroad tracks is where the housing should be in part of the TOD. The master plan talks about having a higher density along the tracks in the TOD, and then as you approach Willow and you go across street, across South Avenue, the plan that New Jersey Transit, that workshop and all the work they did years ago, actually talked about townhouses there. So that's nothing new. But this ordinance is what protects the borough. Protects the borough from lawsuits, protects the borough from builder's remedy. I think every council member really should look upon this as if their vote is the deciding vote, and recognize that if you vote no, and what you're doing is allowing someone to sue us, because residents have stated that we're being placid, or the board is being placid, and just approving this. Well, I don't really think we're going to win a fight against the Council on Affordable Housing. I really don't think the borough is going to do that. But if you vote no, you're taking away the protections of the borough. You're opening up the builder's remedy. You are allowing. I don't really think you're upholding your fiduciary responsibility to the borough, because the lawsuits and the costs that can be placed upon the borough that we would lose would be tremendous. So the document's not perfect. I hope that through the planning board site plans, and I hope that through the planning board look at the redevelopment plans, we were able to amend some of the things that are in here. But in terms of taking action, the council needs to do it. And I gritted my teeth and voted for it, and I ask all the council members to grit your teeth and vote for it too. Otherwise, we are potentially losing a tremendous amount. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, ladies and gentlemen of the council. Bruce Patterson, 325 Willow Avenue. Oddly enough, I actually do agree with Bill Neerstead. Occasionally happens. But anyway, no, the overlay zone should be on both malls. You know, I was at the planning board hearing, and I did agree with them, but not vocally, like, kind of nodded my head. But the question actually comes up is, okay, if that makes good sense, you know, there seems to be some people that agree with Bill Neersted's idea. How far along are we where we can actually say no to this and change the overlay ordinance onto the North Avenue Mall from the Millen Industries, they only in property? I mean, you know, can we actually do something now, or is it like it's always been? It's kind of like this snowball rolling down the hill. Our hands are tied. We cannot stop. We cannot stop. And that's the sad part. I think that's probably what the outrage of the public has been for all these months, is that there's just no stopping this. You know, that stop and take a breath. It's always like these dates, you have to meet these dates, or else the lawsuit, that's what I keep hearing, lawsuit. So anyway, so that's a question maybe somebody could answer. And just one other question. I really have, yeah, actually, I guess the question would be, and it's the same thing for the other two ordinances that are in front of you for approval. The question I do have on this one is, I noticed, you know, there's a lot of covenants, there's possible hiring of people, and I'm just wondering, is this actually going to possibly cost the taxpayers additional monies down the line when this is being put in place? Thanks very much.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, do I have a motion to close the public hearing on ordinance 17-21?
So moved. Second.
Do I have a motion to adopt? That's okay.
I'll introduce the ordinance.
Second? Discussion?
I was wondering if Mr. Renat could answer Mr. Patterson's two questions. One was about moving the overlay at this stage in the game, and the other that he had asked.
On the first question, the answer.
Cost of the borough, right?
On the first question, this is actually in response to Mr. Mearstead also. Remember, the short answer is no, because again, all of these things were already agreed to back in the settlement agreement dated March 27, 2017. You know, could you? No. The answer is no. And we also have another interested party now, which is the contract purchaser for the paperboard property. So the answer to could we change this at this point is no. The other comment I wanted to make is that none of this is inconsistent with the master plan, because the master plan has now been amended. The master plan has been amended in accordance with this plan. So none of it is inconsistent with the master plan. In fact, it carries out the master plan because the master plan, again, was amended to incorporate these different developments. What was the third?
What cost the borough? And I was thinking along the
Hopefully,
lines.
and I say this hopefully, this is not a guarantee. That's the next ordinance. By the way, the ordinance that you're voting on, the affordable housing ordinance, is a framework. It has nothing to do with what was discussed by either of the commenters, but be that as it may, this is simply provides a framework. The next ordinance that you're going to introduce is the development fee ordinance. The hope is that the development fee ordinance, and these fees are set by the state statute, and we were not permitted to impose development fees until and unless you have an affordable housing ordinance. So hopefully the development fees go to a fund. We will have an affordable housing trust fund. Hopefully those fees will cover the expenses. It may be that in the beginning that they may not, but they may. There'll be some fees hopefully coming in from the commercial portion of the Russo development, I don't know what else is boiling before the planning board, but the answer is there may be some expenses. Hopefully they will be covered by development fees that are collected.
Thank you. Ms. Ariano, roll call, please.
Councilwoman Blumenstock.
Aye.
Councilman Kukrow.
No.
Councilman Lazaro.
Aye.
Councilman Petrozelli.
Aye.
Councilman Sarno.
Aye.
Council President Tedesco.
Aye.
Ms. Ariano, please read ordinance 17-22 by title only.
Yes, Mayor. Development fee ordinance. An ordinance to repeal existing Article 13 development fees and to enact a new Article 13 development fees in Chapter 106 land use of the Code of the Borough of Garwood.
Have you received any correspondence?
None, Mayor.
Anyone present who wishes to be heard on concerning ordinance 17-22? Mr. Patterson?
Good evening, Mayor, ladies and gentlemen of the council. Bruce Patterson, 325 Blue Avenue. Just a silly question. I mean, obviously these three ordinances are here, for the council to vote on. And I know by law the public actually gets to say something, but obviously, no matter what the public says, I would assume it doesn't make a bit of difference. So the public can either express outrage or approval or disapproval, and it'll just be moved forward anyway. Is that true? Through you, the
Yes.
attorney? So I mean, we can say whatever we want, but.
Correct.
Yeah, more or less, yes. In other words, when the council agreed on March 27th, 28th, whatever the date was that we adopted it, to the agreement, all of these things are in the agreement. So yes. So in other words, it's a contractual obligation.
Housekeeping only, obviously.
Yes, I mean, there's an agreement to adopt certain ordinances, and that's what we're doing.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have a motion to close public hearing on ordinance 17?
Second.
Do you have a motion to adopt ordinance 17-22?
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none, roll call, Ms. Ariano.
Councilwoman Blumenstock.
Aye.
Councilman Kukrow.
Yes.
Councilman Lazaro.
Aye.
Councilman Petrozelli.
Aye.
Councilman Sarno.
Aye.
And Council President Tedesco.
Aye.
Mr. Arnott, this is in your essence to amend?
Yes, this is the next ordinance, 17-23, is the one that is proposed to be amended. And incidentally, if you're wondering why it is that we can do this, and I told you that we had to adopt the others, because I had to go and get special permission from the special master. I would bring to her attention that these were done, and she agreed that she would recommend to the court that we could introduce this ordinance with these changes and then adopt it hopefully after the compliance hearing will be a condition subsequent, meaning it must be adopted in order to be in compliance. So the specific changes are, and I believe that you all have them, but I will just read them just to make sure that it's in the record. Section 106-98.5, the recommendation is to change subsection capital D 3 to read, development of the site of the Garwood Mall overlay zone is permitted for a permitted use authorized pursuant to the underlying zone or a use permitted in the overlay zone or both. The second amendment is in section 106-95.5H. Maximum building height change is from 40 feet to 50 feet. The last change is in subsection K of the same section. It will read, an indoor trash and recycling area for the collection and storage of generated trash and recyclable materials shall be provided within the principal building. So if one of the council people in agreement with those proposed amendments would move to amend the ordinance, and someone would second, assuming that if there is no discussion that passes, then the ordinance will be republished and will be listed for, again, the final hearing.
Do you want a motion on the amended ordinance?
I'll move to amend the ordinance.
I'll second that.
I assume you have a discussion?
I'm in agreement with Bob. Just make it blunt.
Okay, that's easy. Okay. Do we have a, I assume a roll call, Mr. Bernard?
Yes.
Roll call, Ms. Ariano.
And we're voting on the,
Voting to amend the ordinance.
Right.
Councilman Blumenstock. Aye. Councilman Kukrow.
No.
Councilman Lazaro.
Aye.
Councilman Petrozelli.
Aye.
Councilman Sarno.
Aye.
And Council President Tedesco.
Aye.
Thank you, council.
All right, so I guess at this point then, Madam Clerk, I think we should announce, when do you anticipate then that we'll be able to have the public hearing? Did we say this, the 14th?
That's the next council meeting, so we don't have to introduce this again now, we just have.
No,
a
it does not have to be
public hearing on the
introduced
amendment?
again. We have a public hearing and second reading on the 14th.
Okay, public hearing on the 14th. So I did not publish this yet as adopted, so therefore I publish it that it's going to be a public hearing. I publish my
I'm going to have to
introduction
give
again?
you the language. of
Okay.
it, though.
Yes, our next council meeting is November 14th.
Okay.
Okay. Can we move on, Ms. Ariano?
Yeah.
Introduction. Ms. Ariano, please read ordinance 17-24 by title only.
Yes, Mayor, an ordinance to amend 106-147 application fees in Article 7 fees in Chapter 106 land use of the Code of the Borough of Berwick to revise the fees for certain applications.
Do you have a motion to introduce ordinance 17-24?
Second.
Roll call, Ms. Ariano.
Councilwoman Blumenstock. Aye. Councilman Kukrow.
Yes.
Councilman Lazaro.
Aye.
Councilman Petrozelli.
Aye.
Councilman Sarno.
Aye.
Council President Tedesco.
Aye.
Ms. Ariano, please read ordinance 17-25 by title only.
Yes, Mayor. Ordinance of the Borough Council of the Borough of Berwick, County of Union, New Jersey, adopting the South Avenue 2 redevelopment plan pursuant to the local redevelopment and housing law NJSA 48:12A-1.
Do you have a motion to introduce ordinance 17-25?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, Ms. Ariano.
Councilwoman Blumenstock.
Aye.
Councilman Kukrow.
No.
Councilman Lazaro.
Aye.
Councilman Petrozelli.
Aye.
Councilman Sarno.
No.
And Council President Tedesco.
Aye.
Moving on, council standing committee reports and other reports. Police, Councilman Petrozelli.
Thank you, Mayor. This Saturday, October 28th, is the National Prescription Drug Take-Back Day. The National Prescription Drug Take-Back Day aims to provide a safe, convenient, and responsible means of disposing of prescription drugs while also educating the general public about the potential for abuse and medications. Anyone looking to discard expired or no longer needed prescriptions can deposit them in the drop box located in the police department lobby on October 28th between the hours of 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. Number two, the police department is temporarily suspending grooming standards to allow officers to participate in No Shave November. The goal of No Shave November is to grow awareness by embracing out hair, which many cancer patients lose. Officers will donate the money they typically spend on shaving and grooming to educate the cancer prevention, save lives, and aid those fighting the battle. Anyone interested in supporting the department in their effort or donating to a cause can check us out at www.noshave.org. Third, 2nd Avenue between Walnut Street and Maple Street will be closed to vehicle traffic on Saturday, October 28th, between the hours of 4 and 6 for the annual Trunk or Treat celebration sponsored by the Garwood PTA. And lastly, Chief Wright is pleased to submit candidate George Sanchez for the open position of patrolman to the mayor and council for approval. Mr. Sanchez comes to us from the East Orange Police Department, where he has served since June of 2016.
Thank you. All account, Councilwoman Kukrow.
No report, Mayor. The next meeting is in November.
Thank you. Streets and roads, Councilwoman Blumenstock.
Thank you, Mayor.
In addition to regular garbage pickup, the DPW began leaf cleanup of all borough-owned properties and parks, and they watered the recently planted shade trees in miscellaneous areas throughout the borough. Fall banners were also hung on the decorative light poles throughout the borough. And the DPW also performed pothole repairs in the following locations. The Borough Employee Parking Lot, Walnut Street between 2nd and 3rd, Oak Street between North and 3rd, 200 block of 3rd Avenue, 300 block of 3rd Avenue, Brookside Drive, Cedar Street at the intersection of 4th Avenue. 4 tons of hot mix asphalt was used for the repairs. In addition, the department picked up scrap metal from the annual bulk waste program. Proceeds from the metal represent revenue to the budget, and the amount collected is added to the borough's annual recycling tonnage. That's all for my report, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Fire, Councilman Sarno.
Thank you, Mayor. The monthly report for September 2017, there were 6 incidents. Mutual aid in Broadway, 3 men. Total man hours, 42, all alarms. There's 1 drill, 14 men, 44 hours. At the Lincoln School, where they used ladder evolutions, and they used a 45-foot ladder, 35-foot ladder, roof ladder, attic ladder, and the little giant. So testing all the equipment. Extra duty, pump driver training, 5 men, 10 hours, and can trailer for the Girl Scouts, 2 men, 4 hours. That's all.
Thank you, Councilman. Finance, Council President Tedesco.
No report, Mayor.
Thank you. Buildings and Grounds, Councilman Lazaro.
Thank you, Mayor. Expenditure report that we have received a bid to complete the renovation of the rec center complex. Since we received no bids on the first round of posting for this contract, we were thrilled to receive a bid in our second round of posting the contract. I'm going to encourage the council to support Resolution 17-195 to award Quality Roof Cleaning LLC in the amount of $47,325 for those repairs. While the process has taken longer than we wanted it to, the company is eager to get the recreation center fixed and open for public use, and I know that we are eager to get that open too. As soon as we award the contract and we get started, I will give the public an update on the timeline for when we can expect the complex to reopen. And that's all for my report.
Thank you,
I
Councilman.
have a question. As far as this 47,325, I mean, what are we gonna do moving forward, after that? Like I said, I don't agree with this. I don't agree with doing the work before we have some type of anything from the parties that were responsible. So what can we do going forward? Because basically, the taxpayers are gonna be out almost 50 grand.
Well, the only thing is that we continue to wait, then the rec center is going to remain closed for indefinite, however long it takes for us to get any kind of word from those, the architect and the contractor. So, at this point, if you vote no, it's basically a very long path to potentially getting the rec center fixed. And on top of that, as I don't want to speak too much about it in detail, but but obviously we're going to send a letter to those companies and the architect and to the contractor, and hopefully they will respond. That's all I can say.
Yeah, because basically, I mean, I'm all for fixing it, but, I just believe that the taxpayers are gonna get stuck on this. I don't believe that they're gonna come forward and that's what's gonna happen. So I'm against a rock and a hard place.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I am definitely, it's definitely a difficult situation. I was not here on council when the obviously project was built. It's unfortunate, obviously this incident occurred, but we have a means to move forward to try to get it reopened. And I know a lot of the residents have complained that they want to use this facility. And if we don't award this contract, we've already had a difficult time getting a contractor to do this. I don't know how long it will take for us to get another contract or to wait for that. I think it's going to be a very long time. It's already been a very, very long time. Although, absolutely, I'm not saying that I'm not concerned about the cost. Absolutely, but it's.
All right, so moving forward, you can assure me that we're going to do whatever has to be done to try and get the money back to the taxpayers.
I definitely am going to try my very best and encourage our legal counsel to do whatever they need to do to do that. But that's what I'm going to try.
Including Better Business Bureau.
I think we've taken our conversation a little too far at this point.
Well, I think that's just obvious.
Just one comment, and maybe it's really a question for Councilman Lazaro or Ms. Ariema, but just to clarify, I think for the sake of the public, it's been the building that's been closed, not the entire complex. The complex itself has still been generating revenue to the borough. Rentals have continued despite the building being closed. to the tune of about $20,000 a year. That complex is brought in. Also, there was room left in the bond ordinance, the original bond ordinance for this project. So, Ms. Ariema, even with this $47,000, this project is not over budget.
Correct.
Okay. So I think that's important to note, and I agree. I think we're all on the same page here, and I know Councilman Petrozelli would probably agree with me. This project has been a headache, to say the least, from day one, hurdle after hurdle. It's very frustrating, but we got to get this thing fixed, and then we have to do what we have to do. So I think we're all on the same page.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Councilwoman. Laws and License, Councilman Caparo.
I presented it today.
Thank you. Recreation, Councilman Petrozelli.
Thank you, Mayor. The senior brunch is October 29th from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the Knights of Columbus. The theme this year's event is a Halloween party, so costumes are optional if they decide to wear them. Also, the soccer party will be October 27th. There will be 2 sessions for the soccer party, 5 to 6 and 6 to 7. Right now, we're trying to figure out where they're going to have that based on the weather. They were thinking outside, but it might be at the library. Ice skating will be December 2nd at Warren Acre Park from 6 to 8 p.m. And signups for recreation basketball will start the first week of November. That's all from my report.
Thank you, Councilman. Garwood Senior Liaison, Councilwoman Blumenstock.
Thank you, Mayor. At our last meeting, we were joined by a gentleman from AAA who works as their safety coordinator, Mr. Esposito. He informed us about traffic and driving safety for seniors, and although seniors have the lowest incidence of car crashes at 7%, they make up 14% of car deaths. So to make car trips safer for seniors, AAA has a program called CarFit. With CarFit, technicians complete a 12-point checklist with you and your car to see how well you and your vehicle work together. They then give you a list of recommended car adjustments and adaptations. For instance, they make sure your seat fits comfortably, your head restraint is properly adjusted, your mirrors are positioned to minimize blind spots, and then they can help you decide if there's any adaptive devices you may need to make a safer car ride. Mr. Esposito also talked to us about good driving habits that can help you be a safer driver, such as placing your hands at 8 and 4 rather than 10 and 2, and checking your tires using a quarter, not a penny like we used to, and to always be reevaluating your vision with frequent exams. If anyone would like any information about AAA's programs for seniors, I do have brochures available for you. Our next meeting is November 2nd. That's all for my report, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Library's Mayor Representative, Councilman Lazaro.
Thank you, Mayor. Pumpkins have been picked up for the library's pumpkin painting contest. 34 people are participating and must paint a pumpkin to look like a character from a children's book. Judging starts next week. Check out the library Facebook page for pictures of the entries and vote for your favorite, and the winner will receive a Fandango gift card. After-school STEM programs is a huge success. The Wednesday afternoon program, Inventive Investigation, started October 4th and will end November 15th. So far, the program has covered bugs, earthquakes, and volcanoes, and movie special effects. The class of 20 is full, and there is a waiting list. The sign-up sheet for Design It, the Kids Engineering Club, is just about full. It will start on November 7th at 3 p.m. for kids entering 4th grade and older, and Design It will run through the new year. This month, the library started using email reminders. Patrons who provided email information will receive courtesy reminders, overdues, and reserve notifications by email. And I just used it recently, so I definitely would say it's a great reminder for me. The library saves money on postage, and the patrons get a warning a few days before an item is due. The library is now helping patrons pass their driver's test. In partnership with drivingtests.org, the Garwood Public Library is happy to provide its patrons unlimited online access to the Motor Vehicle Commission manuals, New Jersey-specific MVC practice tests for cars, motorcycles, and commercial driver's license, exam simulators, and MVC-related FAQ sheets. Just visit the Garwood Public Library website and click the News tab to get started. And the grounds for Sculpture, Liberty Hall, and Newark Museum passes have arrived. Still waiting on the Intrepid and Imagine That passes. May be borrowed, so those passes may be borrowed using the library card by adult residents in good standing with the library. And each pass can be borrowed for a 3-day period. please contact the library or check out their website for additional information. And a reminder of the regular programs at the library: Knitting Club every Monday and Thursday at 10:30, STEM every Tuesday at 3 starting November 7th, Adult Craft Tuesday, November 14th at 6 p.m., Storytime every Wednesday at 10:30 a.m., STEM every Wednesday at 3 p.m. through November 15th, Kids Craft Thursday, November 2nd at 3 p.m., Lego Club Thursday, October 26th and November 16th at 3 p.m., and Movie Time every Friday at 10 a.m. The Garwood Library is open Monday through Thursday from 9 a.m. to 8 p.m., Fridays from 9 a.m. to 4:30 p.m., and Saturdays from 9 to 1 p.m. The library will be closed Saturday, November 11th in honor of Veterans Day, and November 23rd and 24th for Thanksgiving. The library will close on November 22nd at 4:30 p.m. And that's all for my report.
Thank you, Councilman. The tradition keeps going on. The library always has a women's report.
They do.
Thank you, though. School Board Liaison, Councilman Sarno.
No report.
Thank you. Celebration of public events and holidays, Liaison, Council President Tedesco.
Thank you, Mayor. The Celebrations Committee met last week to continue to plan its program of events. The annual pumpkin carving contest will take place this Saturday, October 28th. Anyone from toddlers to adults may submit an already carved pumpkin for judging by bringing it with them to the table set up at the edge of the First Aid Squad parking lot at 4 p.m. That day is also the Trick or Trunk event in the parking lot across from Lincoln School, so the winners of the pumpkin carving contest will be announced at about 5 p.m. There will be 4 age categories, with each competing for prizes of gift cards. Hope to see you there with your pumpkin. I hope anyone who is interested has submitted their address for the Halloween house decorating contest. Winners for that will be announced on October 31st at the annual Lions Club sponsored Halloween parade at Lincoln School at about 7:30 p.m. Please mark your calendars for November 25th for the annual holiday tree lighting at Borough Hall. Please check out the Garwood Celebrations Facebook or the Borough website for updates and more information. I just saw a flyer for the luminary sales on the Borough website, so garwood.org, you can check that out. That's all for my report.
Thank you, Councilman. Union County Air Traffic Noise Advisory Board Representative, Councilwoman Blumenstock.
No report, Mayor.
Thank you. Administrative Review Committee, Councilman Kukrow.
No report, Mayor.
Historical Committee, Council President Tedesco.
Thank you, Mayor. The Historical Committee met last week to manufacture the ornaments that will be for sale this holiday season. And there are some samples by Ms. Ariema, I believe. Mr. Patterson's been our president of the Historical Committee, is making motions to me. So, I have to be careful, they're plastic, but really nice. Anyway, so here's an example of one. That's the green one here is the fire department historical photo. And this is a historical photo of the Garwood First Aid Squad. There will be one additional historical photo and another ornament. They're going to be sold in a set of 3, and we look forward to selling them at upcoming town events such as the tree lighting. So please pick up your first series, and hopefully many series to come of these ornaments. They're very cute, and a lot of hard work goes into making them. And let's see if I have anything else. We're still working on getting a newsletter together, and that's pretty much it. Thanks for that, Mayor.
Thank you,
That's
Council
all.
President.
All twisted up.
Councilman
Last
Sarno.
minute jumped out.
No report. Very good. Ms. Ariema, officers' reports.
Treasurer, CFO, Tax Collector, Standing Ground Monthly Report for the third quarter of 2017. Municipal Court Administrator, Rashawn Durant, Monthly Report for September 2017.
Do I have a motion to accept the officers' reports as stated?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Moving on, is there anyone in the audience who wishes to address the mayor and council? Please step to the microphone, state your full name and address, please leave your comments in 3 minutes.
Good evening, Mayor.
I'm going to be very careful what I say.
Yeah, and I apologize for the equipment.
It's okay.
But
I know.
Okay, 325 Middle Avenue. Yes. The parking, I'm glad to hear that we're getting more spots, in the negotiation. But the question actually comes up, how many spots do we actually need, or how many we can live with? I did write a letter. It looks like we probably could use 40 to 45, somewhere around there would probably be decent. I don't know, did anybody actually work up a number that looks like what we can live with as a borough? Or versus, trying to get it out of Russo? Yes?
I don't typically know, but I would say that the planning board, that it'll be part of the total investigation of parking and traffic and things like that.
Yeah, it's quite, 28 is great. It's more than the 9, it's more than the 18.
And there's other situations probably, with the parking garage, maybe it could be something negotiated on the lower level. I'm just.
Yeah, he does have extra spots. That was that letter that I wrote. So he does have extra spots. I don't know, maybe you can negotiate those extra spots over to this area. And that's something to consideration.
As the President mentioned before, maybe it's a timing thing. You need them in the daytime, you need them at night. So there's always a give and take.
All right, but I was just wondering if anybody actually figured out how many, but that's something to keep in mind. So thank you very much. And just the last, as the President of the Historical Committee, the ornaments are 3 for $12. A set. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Patterson. Anyone else at this time? Seeing no one, we'll move on to.
Mayor, just real quick, on the question that Mr. Patterson raised about the parking, I know that the chief of police in Missouriama did speak with me personally about it, and they were hoping for more along the lines of a minimum of 40. We are restricted, obviously, by space over there. You had mentioned the planning board, which sure they can take a look and see what happens, but we've also had some conversations about maybe working out a situation with Mr. Russo and the development across the street, Russo 1 as it's called, for maybe a pass of some sort that seniors could maybe use. And I know the chief of police is definitely dedicated to the safety of the seniors crossing the street. I know, for example, the police have a great presence at school, and I remember, I don't know if it's still true, school, the next one I was about to say, but also I remember police officers being stationed outside of churches. So I know the police department here is very committed to the safety, and I know I had a conversation with the police chief about this. We'll definitely work it out.
Thank you. Seeing none, we'll move on to consent agenda. Do I have a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented?
I'll make that motion, Mayor.
I'd like to remove 17-197 from the consent agenda, please.
17-197. Do I have a motion to accept the amended consent agenda?
I'll make that motion, Mayor.
Second?
Roll call, Ms. Ariema?
Councilwoman Blumenstock. Aye. Councilman Kukrow.
Yes.
Councilman Lazaro.
Aye.
Councilman Petrozelli.
Aye.
Councilman Sarno.
Aye.
And Council President Fusco.
Aye.
Do you have any others than 197, Ms. Ariema?
197 first.
Okay, thank you.
So I don't have to read that, because we have it.
Do you have a motion for 197, please?
I'll make that motion, Mayor.
Second. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call, Ms. Ariema.
Councilwoman Blumenstock. Aye. Councilman Kukrow.
No.
Councilman Lazaro.
Aye.
Councilman Petrozelli.
Aye.
Councilman Sarno.
Aye.
Council President Fusco.
Aye.
I have 2 resolutions that are on the consent agenda. The first one is Resolution 17-198. Be resolved by the Council of the Borough of Garwood County, Union State of New Jersey, in accordance with Borough Code, Chapter 99-12.1 BC, hereby set forth the following. The bulk pickup program will be held twice in 2018. Spring pickup will be held Monday, June 11, 2018, and run for as many days as necessary to complete the program, in accordance with the number of permits sold. Fall pickup will be Monday, October 22nd, 2018, and run for as many days necessary to complete the program in accordance with the number of permits sold. 2, the bulk permit program fee for 2018 is hereby set at $95 per permit per household with disposal of up to 750 pounds of bulk type waste. Be it further resolved by the Council of the Borough of Garwood County of Union State of New Jersey, hereby authorize the Borough Administrator Clerk to proceed with the implement of the above accordingly.
Do you have a motion to accept 17-198?
So moved. Second?
Discussion? Roll call, Ms. Ariema?
Councilwoman Blumenstock. Aye. Councilman Kukrow.
Yes.
Councilman Lazaro.
Aye.
Councilman Petrozelli.
Aye.
Councilman Sarno.
Aye.
And Council President Fusco.
Aye.
Resolution 17-199. Be resolved by the Council of the Borough of Garwood County, Union State of New Jersey, hereby authorize the Borough Administrative Clerk to prepare a request for proposal for professional services for the preparation of borough tax maps and professional reevaluation services in the Borough of Garwood. Be it further resolved, the municipal clerk be and is hereby authorized to solicit proposals for the above services in accordance with law.
Do I have a motion to accept resolution 17-199?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Seeing none, roll call, Ms. Ariano.
Councilwoman Blumenstock. Aye. Councilwoman Kukrow.
Yes.
Councilman Lazaro.
Aye.
Councilman Petrozelli.
Aye.
Councilman Sarno.
Aye.
And Council President Tedesco.
Aye.
That's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you. Anyone on the council have any new business? I'm happy to make some appointments to committees and thank the Council President Tedesco and her board. He's that very successfully. Celebrations Committee, Jennifer Guerrero and Scott Hagmar. Historical Committee, Helen Lucius and Jenny Brown. Moving on to payment of claims.
Be resolved, the following claims as approved being the same are hereby ordered paid and properly signed and verified, and the payment of payroll as listed hereby confirmed and ratified.
Do I have a motion to adopt payment of claims?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, Ms. Ariano.
Councilwoman Blumenstock.
Aye.
Councilman Kukrow.
Yes.
Councilman Lazaro.
Aye.
Councilman Petrozelli.
Aye.
Councilman Sarno.
Aye.
And Council President Tedesco.
Aye.
Move on to adjournment. The regular meeting of the mayor and council will be held on Tuesday, November 14th, 2017, in council chambers at 7:15 p.m. Workshop to start at 7 p.m. There will be a public hearing in council chambers on ordinance number 17-24 and ordinance 17-25 on Tuesday, November 14th at 7:15 p.m. Soon thereafter. And what about 17-23? Also 17-23 as amended. Now, a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.